Hi everyone, I have my guest Binyamin today, and he has a lot of interviews on his channels. So he tries to look for the capital T truth by like interviewing people. It's his TI goal, the quest for truth. So welcome Binyamin. I really enjoy your channel and it has a
Thanks.
really good content. Like you're very TI accurate and it's just really fun watching your interactions.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. I guess you
Yeah.
have a high enough consume to be able to watch. I don't know if many people can keep up with all the interviews I do, but
Yeah, you send like interview after interview. You really got it.
yeah.
So yeah, more about your quest for the TI truth. You had a definition for TI that you just posted about TI is about filtering out falsehood from your mind and like reconciling contradictions
Yeah, that's right.
and
Yeah.
examining truth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Um, Anytime you hear something new as a TI user, you're always thinking, how is that wrong? That's what you're focused on. And, if you look for something enough, you'll find it. And so it kind of gets on people's nerves that you're always correcting them and correcting things that you hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like you want to filter out what's false from it because you want like your inner
Right.
network of logical connections to be accurate.
That's right. Yeah. So if you only let truth in your mind, then you'll only have truth to play with, and you can only build truth from there, sort of thing.
That's true. Uh,
Yeah.
that was a play on words. That's true.
Right.
You also have this cool idea about TI where it's about comparisons because you're comparing things for truth value. Is this true or is this true, and which parts of it are?
Right. A lot of that is what OP calls double observing.
Oh,
Um, so I can see where someone who's using TI second or third even that won't really do that as much. But for TI dominant, a lot of our double observing is all based on running it through the mechanism of truth, comparing sensory to intuition and seeing where the contradiction is between the two, right? Because the two can contradict.
yeah, and it's like figuring out like I see TI as if then statements. So it's like if A is true, then B would be true. But if B isn't true, then A isn't true. And then it's like, okay, I know what I was saying
Yeah.
wasn't that logical, but
No,
it's
no,
like,
yeah, yeah. It's part of it. That's like how logic works, but I don't think TI is logic itself. I
yeah,
think it uses logic. I think anyone can use logic as well. All the functions need logic to some degree as well.
that's true. And I guess
Yeah,
like what makes TI is like figuring out on your own. And it's kind of like this independent, individualistic, logical type of feel.
right. It's this delusion that I am the ultimate authority on what is true, basically.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
It's almost like you're building logic from the bottom up because you're not deferring it to anyone. So
that's
you're
right. I'm
building it
responsible.
from
I'm
the,
responsible for truth. I'm responsible for building the logical framework.
yes.
And it's delusional, right? Because like TE realizes that, truth can't just be in one person. Like, obviously I'm very subjective, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm building this objective framework that, that is objectively true, right?
That's
Yeah,
true. It's almost like TI doesn't want to let in the outside too much because it might contaminate their like the understanding of truth. Because if you
that's right.
take all of the collective seriously, then you're going to contaminate
That's right.
logical value of what you've been sorting. So
Yeah.
you got to be very selective with how you like filter logic.
Yeah. And because it's coupled with SE for me, so that means even too much SE is overwhelming because you really want to filter that out. You want to make sure all of the details are correct. So if someone's just shoving tons of details on you, then you're going to get overwhelmed because you have so many things to sort through. But even worse than that for me as an ISTP is people who are throwing in intuition on me, because I like to come to my own conclusion on intuition. I like to form my own intuitive framework, and someone who's throwing intuition at me, there's no details to back it up. So it takes a lot of effort to integrate it into my intuition, into my framework, because I don't know where it fits. I don't know how to fit it, because like if it already fits, if there's already a space for it, then no problem. I can put a placeholder or something like that. But other than that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like with TI, when one part of the system moves, you have to figure out how it moves with the rest of the logic. So it's like if you give me an intuition, it has to be able to fit into the system, and this node affects many other nodes. So there's an interrelated element to understanding logic in TI maybe.
Yeah, I think that's more true for people who are using it with NE that are looking
Yeah.
at those nodes.
Yes.
Um, I can only talk about my personal experience with it with certainty and just say
Mhm.
that I'm trying to fit everything into a single framework to make everything as concise. Like I really feel the NI influence on what I'm doing to gather
Yeah,
information.
yeah, conciseness and narrowing down is very NI.
Right. It's
Yeah.
NI and it's also TI wants to narrow down as well.
Yes.
This.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then once you have all of these truths, you want to sort of group them together in an understanding that sort of represents them all.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like finding the underpinning algorithm behind it all.
Right. Yeah. And
Mm.
I'm assuming that you do the same thing as well with your NITI.
Yeah, I do. I do it with what I call people cycles. So I like to figure out how it works within like humanity and how
Hmm.
like one person's actions sets off a cycle of relational outcomes. So like there's also a slight FE element where it's like, well, what relational outcomes can I understand with my NITI?
Hmm.
And I watched one of your videos that like they're really good. It was about TE and TI and comparing the two, where you said that TE is precise results and
Accurate.
TI,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
like
T is precise. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Sorry,
then
that was my TI just rejecting that.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. TI DOMs
Correcting you there. Yeah.
are no machines.
That's
That's
right.
what
Yeah.
David
Well,
Shen
especially the
told me.
masculine TI as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Uh, it's basically like what I was talking about was you had like this target, and like TI is looking to understand the bullets around the accurate target point, whereas like you said that TE is kind of looking for that precise result. You had a diagram that I was trying to map out, and
Right.
I
Yeah.
thought it was really true
Mm.
because TI is looking for that like making sense of the logic of it. So the process, it's very process related, whereas like TE is more like results and outcomes. I find like judgers tend to emphasize the outcome portion of it. So I liked it when you said that like TE was looking for precise outcomes. That's why like they try to like make things work for everyone. It's like
Yeah.
this precise
Well,
TE.
they don't necessarily need the result to be true. They just need it
Yes.
to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it's hard to just accept something that works if there's no underlying truth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I would almost like if something works and and it's based on all of these false axioms that are obviously false, then I would just reject the process entirely and try to come up with a new way to make it work, even if it's worse. Even if it works worse, I would rather that. I like biologically by default.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it works less, but you understand it TI more, and it makes more like rational sense with the TI maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, so let's say you have the ancient astronomy, right? That decides that the all of planets are orbiting around the Earth, the sun is orbiting around the Earth, right? And they can predict the future using that, right? It's pretty accurate,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not true. And so if someone were to propose this model that I'm not saying the newer models obviously work better, but let's say we had another model that worked a little bit worse, but it had the the sun at the center of the solar system, then I would choose that model even though it works less.
It's true. So
Yeah.
like by work less, you mean less efficient to go by?
Right, less predictive power, less accuracy in its prediction, but as long as it's more true, less precision in its prediction.
Oh, that's what you meant by accuracy.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So you said TE and accuracy, and I was trying to understand that, but I didn't get that
Yeah.
until you explained that. And you said that like TE has accuracy with predictive outcome. So it knows like the spectrum, how it will work with the spectrum. So it has more of that. But like TI maybe has more logical, like base logic
I mean,
accuracy.
like TI isn't against things that work. TI also wants to make things work. So
Mhm.
here's another thing that I've found where like if we have a challenge ahead of us, for example, so I will go and figure out how to solve the challenge and then just go and implement it, right? TE won't even start solving the challenge until it get like it. This is not all TE, but this is what TE generally likes to do to gather people together, brainstorm together, think of solutions together, get everyone on the same page, and then go and do the solution. And in the meantime, you've got the TI users that are already starting to implement what they think is right. And even though they might be wrong, even though it might not work, that they're just off on their own doing it. Whereas TE is working together with people more to get that outcome.
Yeah, so TE is more like collaborative with figuring out the outcome with
Yeah,
that
and they're more
external world.
focused on the success of the outcome, and TI is more focused. You're right on the on if the process is true to get to that outcome.
True. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, so success, like TE is more success. Like, so for people like watching, TE is extroverted thinking. It's more like goal oriented. So it's more like, does this like succeed or fail? And
Right.
it's
Although they're
metric.
not afraid of failure, they
Oh,
just,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But I guess it's how they understand maybe like, okay, I don't want to speak for TE users, but it's
yeah,
like
same.
how
Yeah,
they understand the metrics more. Like it's more outcome based metrics. Whereas like,
it can be. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
yeah. So
So
with
one of the things I noticed with a TE user, he asked me about my YouTube channel and he wants to know the numbers, like how many subscribers I have, this, and like this stuff doesn't mean anything to me. What means something to me is if I'm actually producing something that's valuable, if if people like it and accept it, and like the numbers will come. I'm not focused on that, but TE is all about getting those numbers up, and not all TE. I'm generalizing here, but this one person, that's what he was interested in, and he was like, well, what does it matter if people like your stuff if the numbers don't reflect it, right?
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
TE and performance metrics.
right.
Or maybe not. It's just my assumption for now until I
Well,
talk.
if that's their measure of success, then that's what they'll focus on. Like you
Yeah.
have to define what is success for themselves as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what is TI in contrast? Like introverted
T
thinking.
T I TI um, TI just solves the problem, finds the contradiction, finds the solution. I'm responsible for finding out on my own. I'm responsible. And so until I've figured out a solution, I don't want to go and ask someone to see if it works, right? I don't want to collaborate with anyone. I want to find my own perspective, my own solution before I go and test it, before I go and see if someone else has input on it. Because if I come empty-handed to people and have them come up with solutions, I'll never be on board.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I have no problem like arguing and changing my logic, changing what I've decided, as long as I have like a starting point that I'm already coming from. Because like that's where I guess that's where the identity comes into play, where like I need to feel like I've figured something out first before I can go to someone else. And if I'm wrong, that's cool. I'll accept them and they'll correct me. But I need that first starting point. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. So TI is more like vetting of the logic then? Or
Yeah. What do you mean by vetting?
it's like, okay, so like looking for true, false, like true, false.
Yeah.
Like logic is kind of like a Boolean statement, like, the zeros and ones. And it's like, well,
Right.
is it true or false? And it's like that.
So like I've seen people who learned logic in university and stuff like that. And for me, it's just sort of obvious, all of that stuff. Like it's not, it's something that we naturally figure out and learn anyways. And so what happened, I was getting into an argument with someone, and then like I couldn't see how they weren't making logical steps. And this person who wasn't TI, he learned how to do logic academically. He was able to analyze my steps and say, yes, this one is holding true because he used, I don't even know, he used this system and then this, like, it's not even something that we're aware of consciously. It's just the way we wield logic. It's like second nature to us as well. And I mean, there are misconceptions. I mean, like, there, obviously there's like, until you've learned Bayesian statistics or something, you can make all kinds of misconceptions with logic as well. Cause like there's some things that are intuitively true, but don't actually hold up. So I guess the more also you test your logic against objective, I think, reality as well, you can refine your skills as well more. Yeah.
That's true. It's like, I wonder if TI also has to do with like categorizing things in finer and finer ways. So it's like, well, this can be categorized in an even finer way, in a finer way, until it gets to like the logical root. I don't know, like maybe that's more NI influenced, but it's like,
I think that is very NI influenced. I think TI is good at building up as well,
okay.
and not just narrowing down.
Yeah.
And so if you have all of these truths, these axioms that you can use, you can build up from them. You can build up frameworks, make new pieces, new axioms that are true because what's holding it up is true. And just sort of work with those new pieces, and yeah.
That's so awesome. So it's like, yeah, frameworks. It's like creating this network framework, or like understanding, like creating good premises. Like I don't know, it's like having integrity with your logical premises.
Right. And so then like sometimes we're wrong. It happens, but it's not because when we are wrong, we know where and why, because like it's really easy to argue with a TI user, because you'll be like, you got this fact wrong. And then you tell them that fact, and then they'll just readjust their logic automatically. You don't tell them that they've logically done a mistake, because that's not true. They've missed a fact. And when you talk to a TI user and you say, okay, there's this pattern, by the way, and then they'll be like, okay, so now I'll restructure things, and then I'm good, right? So it's not that the TI is making a mistake, it's that there's some axiom that was incorrect in building that conclusion.
Yeah. It's like updating your axioms, premises, and then updating your algorithm. So
right. So I had this interview with Asa, for example, where I clicked on something by accident, and then I was scrolling up and I clicked on another comment, and he thought that comment came before the other one. He's like, I think maybe that comment might shed light on this comment because it came before. And I said, no, I was scrolling up. So like I fixed that axiom. Like he thought that I was going down in the comments and I was going up. And so he built a logical conclusion based on me going down. And I said, no, I was going up in the comments, and that was it. We didn't need to argue about it or say he was wrong or nothing like that. Just that little piece of information corrected his interpretation.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I wonder if like TI users try to help other people by going like correcting their axioms.
That's
it's
right.
like, oh, there's a slight misinterpretation with your axiom here. Maybe I can help you.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And people, I think it annoys maybe people who are more focused on the point rather than on how they got to the point. And for TI users, if someone has a point and they build up to it, and then there's like a step there that's not correct or that's questionable that we want to have clarified, we need to get that clarification. We need to be on board with the step that they took to get to the next step. Whereas the person, like an NI DOM, for example, just wants to get to the point. They don't care about how they got there, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. With TI, what do you think bugs TI the most?
So there's a few things. So it could be people who don't respect your TI, I guess, in a way. Try to force conclusions on you without allowing you to create them yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
it
so
could
there's
be, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, there's an independent aspect to TI. It's like let me figure it out on my own too. Like or maybe.
Right. Like if someone just comes to you and tells you a conclusion, like we're going to fix this car in this way. And TI is like, okay, how did you come to that conclusion? Like, I don't want to make a mistake here. Like, because we're responsible for the logic. We're responsible to know how they did that. And it happens a lot in our lives that when we don't take that responsibility, then there's a failure, and then we get blamed. So we
Yeah.
we have that need to also do the logic, to follow
Yeah.
the logic.
Does
Whereas
it
I don't think TE needs that. As long as everyone's on board, they'll just work to whatever goal they've decided logically without knowing that behind the scenes it's correct.
yeah. Then my question for you is, does it ever make you like resentful when you know that a certain axiom that someone has causes them to do an inaccurate thing, and then it causes this snowball, and then you're like, well, if you had an axiom that was correct,
Yeah.
maybe.
So in the end, I think if the person is receptive and listens, and we can work that we can help them get to that conclusion and help them solve things. It's when people just gloss over us and like even if we're wrong, we need to get to that decision on our own. But yeah, if someone has a false axiom, that's annoying. If TE also likes to bring arguments without looking at the axioms behind them, and TE will throw support arguments with other arguments externally. And for TI, it feels like they're going somewhere unneeded. Like this doesn't actually support this. What should support it is the structure of it, not another argument externally. I don't know if you get that as well.
That that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is like, I don't know, upsets the TI users when their TI gets glossed over, like with no
Right. That's one of
consideration
the
at
things
all.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then another one is if someone is just speaking, I don't know, just saying things that are just wrong and just building logic that is wrong. And it's like, it's really, I don't know, like it makes the hairs on your back stand up. It's someone who's using logic very badly is just very annoying for a TI user to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you'll try to like tell them that maybe it's wrong, but so they'll have to first gloss over you trying to correct them, and then you're still watching them like build on their incorrect logic while they also
Right.
glossed over
And
you.
you're stuck on this point like 2 hours ago where they built everything off of that. And like, so the question is, do you let them build? Do you let them just talk? And then after 2 hours, you'll be like, well, all of this was wrong because you made this improper conclusion down here. And so you just wasted your 2 hours and their 2 hours. Like I'm exaggerating, but or do you interrupt them and just get them upset with you because you're not able to just listen to what they're saying and they say that you're arguing with
I'm
them?
so sorry, my alarm's just
Yeah,
going
of
off.
course. We can pause it. Yep.
Oh my gosh, that is. I am so sorry,
No, it's all
Binyamin.
good. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So yeah, so do we risk people thinking that we're argumentative? And yeah, so you'll see me a lot of times when someone says something that just strikes my TI wrong, and it doesn't actually even matter. I'll just be like, sure, sure, think what you want. That's fine.
Yeah, yeah. It's just exasperating.
Yeah, if it actually matters, then I might have to interject. But other than that, yeah.
hmm
And we come off as really just anal and annoying and disagreeable and argumentative if we listen to that TI all the time.
That is true. Man, I'm having an observer freak out right now because my alarm just went off, and I was like, well, I planned for this to like, I wanted this to go well without the alarm going off, without the police siren in the background, without my parents stepping really loudly and the dogs barking. And I'm like, the world why? Like, I feel like I had this vision for how it would go out, and then I'm like, all of these factors, man.
But that's what happens when you plan too much, right? Something's going to come in.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, totally. So just wanted to interject with observer figure out.
All right. Yeah, I feel for you. I could never understand how big a deal it is for you, but I get it, that it's a big deal. Yeah.
Thank you for your FE empathy.
For my FE, my awkward inferior FE. Yeah. So another thing that I think people get wrong, I think this starts a little bit in the OP community as well, is that they say that, I've said this in a couple interviews already, that they say that truth, like TI is truth for self, but it feels more like it's self for truth from our perspective. And obviously we are the ones that decide what is true or not, but in the end, we're trying to keep it as objectively true as possible. And if we see that there is a mistake, we'll move towards it. We'll fix things. We'll fix ourselves. And one of the things that is difficult for us is if there's no logical reason to say no to something or say yes to something, and we're just vulnerable in that case. So if someone's like, hey, you should come out tonight, and it's something that we don't want to do, like, because we still get that FI want or not, right? But we don't have a logical reason to say no, so we'll just say yes.
So you still have like that reaction of maybe you don't want to go,
I don't
but
want
like
to, but
yeah, but it's like
reason.
You don't really listen to that. You listen to your reasons, so you still
That's right.
end up listening to your reasons, even if it can.
But then also, like, there's no reason to go, but there's no reason to not go. So there's no logic there at all. Like, it happens a lot of times where we have to make a decision and there's no logic to grasp onto. There's no true outcome for it. And it's really debilitating and confusing for us, because we want to say no, but we can't, or we want to say yes, but we can't. Like, it's that sort of situation where we just like, okay, well, we'll do what everyone else wants because of that inferior FE that wants to make everyone happy, and my TI is not helping me right now. Yeah.
Well, that's really like sweet that like your FE, I don't know, forces you. No, it's kind of bad for your own TI emotional health to like get swayed by the FE. But it's interesting how you say like that, like it's about, I think you said self to find truth or something instead of truth for the self. So it's like the self is the ultimate arbitrator of like letting the logic pass or go through, and it's not like like, so I liked your distinction there, because it's like TI needs to figure out for itself. And I was wondering, Binyamin, when you take notes, do you take notes? Like when you go to a seminar, do you ever take notes?
No.
Cool. Let me tell you why I asked you that. So I'm certified in personality hackers profiler training too.
Okay.
And when we were doing the TI section, Joel was like, look at all the TI users. None of them, like the TI DOMs, none of them are taking notes. Because like there's something there. It's got to be something psychological.
Yeah.
TI wants to figure out for itself. Like it wants to research for itself. It's kind of like taking authority as a grain of salt. It's like, cool. But it's kind of like, I won't, like, the thing is, the act of writing something down is, it contradicts something in the TI wiring, but I don't know
why.
Yeah,
you're right. You're right. It's exactly what it feels like. It's really weird, because I've seen other TI users take notes in university and stuff, because that's what we're supposed to do. And I've tried it as well. But I mean, yeah, I just never did. Everyone was always surprised that I was never taking notes and that I was still doing well, and they didn't get it. It didn't make sense. And I just thought, like, it's more important to understand what's going on and to learn what the teachers or the professor is saying, rather than just copy it down and go learn it later. Like, why not just learn it now? I don't know.
Yeah. It's like, you don't want to have like, you don't want to copy it, like, or maybe like, how I understand it is that like when you write something down, it's kind of like copying and pasting what the other person is thinking. So it's not letting you like
Internalize it.
start
Yeah.
from the ground up and understand it yourself. So
It distracts the TI too.
it distracts TI
Yeah.
to do that.
Because you can't
So
TI while you're copying stuff down.
that is such a good point.
Yeah.
Wow, Binyamin, getting to the heart of things. I'm really entertained right now.
Okay.
um, yeah, it distracts TI to TE. Um, that's
What I,
why,
let's go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. Or it's like, wow, it's like to take pre-established procedure too seriously or to like follow explicitly what someone says distracts a TI user from their actual process. If that makes sense. Or
In a
maybe.
way, yeah. Yeah, in a way. Why not?
I'm trying to understand it. Over
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I will. I mean like,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, an example I could bring about self for truth is like, let's say I discovered that it was logically incorrect to be eating animals, right? There's no reason. It's inefficient. It's it's you can get all of the health requirements not doing it. It's healthier in a way too. So like there's all of these reasons that I adapted that eating meat like is just not right. So then even though I might like meat, even though I might still want meat, it's like, okay, well now I know that's true. I can't not move myself to the truth. So it's really, it really felt like that. It's like self for truth. Like I found out the truth. Now I can't help it. That's where I'm going.
That's so interesting. So like
Yeah.
TI is like a conviction. It's like when TI is
Also,
sure, it's like irrefutable.
that's right.
Because it's like based on so many logical blocks that the conviction is strong because you've thought about it a lot.
Yeah. If something is true, like there's no turning away from it for a TI user. It's like betraying yourself. It's a self betrayal.
Oh yeah, TI is heavily linked to the identity.
That's right.
So it's like I want to compare this to introverted feeling. So introverted feeling, it has like personal value convictions,
Mm-hmm.
whereas introverted thinking, on the other hand, TI has logical convictions.
That's
Um,
right.
so there's that parallel there.
So I think logical convictions can also be values, but they
Yes,
just have to be true,
yes,
right? So it's like, okay, so let's say giving money to the poor, for example, right? So one person might do it because it makes them feel good. Another person might do it because they think that it's important for society that, you know, or that one day they might be poor and they'd want someone to do it for them or stuff like that. TI would if, as soon as TI figures out that this is what's true to do is to give money to the poor, because I don't know, I can't think of a reason right now, but if I were to get to that point, then that's what I would have to do. I would have to give money to the poor, and it's a value, but it's something that's true, and that's why it's a value.
yeah. So it's like a TI principle, a guiding principle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Once the guiding principle is established, it's like
Right. It's
convicted.
really hard to figure out what FI is because they're not really articulate. I'm still trying to sort through it because they're not really able to express what they actually do, but they're doing something. And I think the bottom line for them is they're like prioritizing their priorities. They're seeing which priorities are higher. They're reprioritizing. They're doing that sort of thing. So for them, they have to move to whatever is more important. And so it's in a way, TI runs into a lot of contradictions as well, because if you've accepted this truth and this truth, but you can only get one of them, then you have a contradiction. And then that's where TI gets stuck because there's no priority. There's no, this is more important than this. It's which one is more true. And it's a new problem that you have to resolve. So a lot of moral quandaries, TI runs into roadblocks. They can freeze up because there's no hierarchy there. So in that case, we would have to default to the FE to say, okay, what's acceptable, in that way.
That's so true. So like
Yeah.
TI is trying to figure out like a logical understanding from the ground up. So it's like doing like the hierarchy thing that you mentioned in the sense that like I wanted to connect it to something, but I totally forgot. Oh yeah,
Sorry, yeah.
TI is like a belief, and it's kind of like or like what I call it is like FE and TE are like more opinions from consensus. Like so,
Okay.
extroverted feeling, extroverted thinking, to me are like opinions from like they're sorting the opinions from the consensus, whereas like TI and FI are more about like building beliefs from the ground up. So
Sure.
maybe like it's
Yeah.
my hypothesis for the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. No,
Uh,
I can go with that. I can get on board with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
um, and with that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I'm like trying to understand and
Yeah.
grab the gold nuggets from what you're saying because you offer a lot of gold nuggets,
Do I?
Binyamin.
All right. I wanted to say too that I really like your interview style and that you're focusing on a single function like this, and you're bringing someone with a dominant function, and like it's really different from what I'm doing. I'm like just like chaos, lots of sensory, lots of people, lots of different functions, animals, all that stuff. And you're really focused on what you're trying to get, and you're bringing one person at a time with like this in mind, sort of thing. So I think it's good. You're going to get the 8 functions from a dominant perspective to start with.
Yeah.
A good,
Wow, you understood what I was going for. Thank you.
yeah,
My grand vision for this is to like create a series with people that I agree with their type. So it's like an archive of people who I think are correctly typed. So
right,
basically it's like they type themselves at something and I agree with their own self-typing, and then I invite them on and we talk
right.
about it. Because if MBTI is really true, then we should be able to, if they're correctly typed, deduce some sort of core reality. So this is like for like I want to prove in my own way that MBTI is true. So this is my
For your own
TI.
TI, yeah,
It's for my own TI too.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like TI is kind of like accountable for its own logic, or it's
yeah,
like cool. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, once that's the thing. If it's not true, it feels like I'm wasting my time here, right? Like, what am I dabbling in all of this stuff if there's no truth behind it?
hmm
Okay, even if it just works, even if it's just something, okay, you can be successful, personally grow, and be a multimillionaire, and is like, well, did I do it based on something false? Then no, I don't want that. I
Yeah.
need to know that it's true first. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an integrity component to TI because it's like
Yeah,
I like it has to be true, like or
that's
else
right.
what is the point?
That's right. And it can lead to people seeing you as selfish a lot. Um, like I'm part of this group, and then all of a sudden I disagree with the group. I can't be on board with them. I can't join them. I can't be with them. And then they're like, it's like I'm betraying them. But in a way, it's not. I just can't betray what is true. I can't, like, that's the dilemma there. And
Yeah.
so in order to do that, I would really have to strongly sit into my FE and just sacrifice the truth for the the cohesive whole of, I don't know, of the group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's like if it's not true, it's like betraying your own sense of truth, and because TI is your identity. So if you don't
Yeah.
follow it, then it's like a self-betrayal.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's where the tribe and self conflict comes
That's
from.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in the same way, it's like, okay, well, let's say I went against my truth here. I've lost my integrity. Like, how is anyone ever going to trust me again? Because they'll see that I've betrayed myself here. So what's to stop me from doing it in the future, right? And so
hmm
there's that integrity component. And I found this recently with OP, because like I'm just attacking falsehood anywhere it is. And because I'm examining OP at the moment, people get offended that I'm like picking out the falsehoods in OP, for example. Um, and it's just like, that's just me keeping my integrity. Like, I can agree with something overall and just figure out what's wrong with it on a small scale. And then when OP gets attacked by like someone who disagrees with it, then when I go to fight for OP, they know I'm not doing it because I'm biased towards OP, because I'm the one who was speaking out against it. I'm doing it because I'm defending a truth. I'm sort of thing. Yeah.
That is
It
so
just, yeah, it preserves your integrity.
That is so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You call TI truth seeking, right? Or is that, what is your
Yeah.
definition? Is that right?
I'm still playing with it a little bit, but yeah, TI I'm more certain on. I'm getting closer to the other ones as well. I've just accepted that at this moment that I need to learn, like you, I need to learn about the functions from people who are using them and not from my own ideas or my own misconceptions. And so if I come up with a conclusion, I need to go and present it to those people in order to make sure that it lines up with their experience of it. So right now, ironically enough, the hardest one is TE because there's no agreement, which is kind of ironic.
That is ironic.
Yeah.
There's you talked about TI being offensive. Like you challenge the falsehoods in OP, even though you love it like as a whole, like you're still like falsehood, potential falsehood.
That's
And it
right.
kind of
Yeah.
like it offends people because they're like they think it's a lack of respect because like
I guess.
if they don't have the TI mission of like checking the integrity of the truth in things,
That's
then
right.
then it's easy for them to project that you're
That's
doing
right.
it for malicious or ill-intended.
Right. And when in actuality, it's because of the respect that I would go
Yes.
and do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't care. I would just, let them do whatever they're doing and, you know, go off on my own, right? It's because I respect it that I'm willing to point out the misconceptions and try to straighten it out and make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you like saying it's like kind of worth your time if you were to point out a falsehood? Because like you see some like you respect it enough to do it. Or
Right. But also it's like, it's not even that much of a choice either, because it's more like this. It's like this responsibility I have to point out falsehoods. Um, I, I don't know. I'm thinking about like, uh, nanobots for some reason that are just, let's say in clothing, right? So you get a tear in the clothing. And so the nanobots are going around the clothes to make sure there's no tears. And then they find this tear and they've got to fix it. And so that's what it kind of feels like TI users are doing. They're just like each TI user on his own is going around making sure everything's there. And, one TI user might be wrong and try to come and go and fix something. And then everyone's going to be like, no, what are you doing? But for the most part, that's what it feels like. That's what it seems like TI is doing. Like they're all independent, but they're working together on like this network of independence. I don't know.
that is
It
so
is.
interesting. Yeah, it's like you're pointing out the inconsistencies, the incongruities in logic.
Right. And if there's enough people in society doing that, then we'll be more true overall, I guess.
Yeah, you would be like
Yeah.
refining society's algorithm to like just a
Right.
higher place. It's like the
Yeah.
entire world's society's truth
Right.
star. The truth star will go up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then, and it rubs people the wrong way because lots of people like status quo stuff. They don't like changes, even though if it's improvement in some way. Well, I mean, it's subjective too. What's improvement? Like everyone has to agree as a society what's an improvement, what's better, right? But if we're constantly colliding with the falsehood in I guess this is also beta values. If we're constantly colliding with the falsehood in society, then like, so this is a one way that I see truth is that you can never absolutely know for certainty that something's true, but if there's no contradictions somewhere, then you can be certain that there's no falsehood there, right? Falsehood is what contradicts. And so if I have constructed a truth and that's who I am, that's my identity, and I'm contradicting things in the world, that means either something in me is false and I got to fix it, or something in the world is false, or both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like you might end up seeing a lot of ISTPs going to court or things like that because they've contradicted with something in society where maybe that thing should be examined rather than punishing the person because he was just being living up to his own integrity by colliding with that thing.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Did you realize, Binyamin, you just used a either or statement, which is a principle of logic that you learn in
No
philosophy
idea.
class?
No.
So
So
you
you
just said in your sentence, either this or that.
oh
It's
yeah.
known as how you logically sort things.
Right. Okay.
So there is like some component of like pristine surgical logic with ITP, like, so because even your language is what you learn to have the most precise logic. So just letting you know, the way you phrase it is very logical.
So it's very natural. Like if you wanted me to break down the idea of it, I get that I do that, but yeah, it's not something that I'm conscious of.
Yeah, unconscious logical understanding. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
It's weird for me to think that people don't use logic automatically.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Oh, I'm constantly surprised. Yeah. Yeah.
It's because I was listening to one of Damon Gray's videos about TE, like extroverted thinking, and he talked about how like TE users see logic as separate entities. So when they're dealing with a separate entity of logic, they're not bringing over that logical understanding to another separate entity. Because when they're dealing with it, it's like with those specific external.
It's like momentary. It's case by case.
Momentary. But with TI, like they carry on, like they get a logical nugget and then they carry it on, like they keep that, and then they with the other cases. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Or maybe?
Yeah. It could be, yeah.
Oh, like I don't know. I'm just still trying to parse out the understanding.
No, it could be. I'm not. My TI isn't saying no. It's accepting it as a possibility. Yeah.
It's a possibility. Yeah, I'm also accepting it as a possibility, but I'm open to. Like if reality says it isn't, then I'm gonna change how I see it.
That's a very grown up of an NI user to default to reality.
It's because I don't want to be stuck in wishy-washy land.
Right. Are you using masculine NI or feminine?
I have masculine NI.
Oh wow, so that's even harder.
It's hard.
To default to reality like that.
Yeah, but sometimes when you gotta do what you gotta do.
No, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. Yeah. I think intuitives can really, I don't know, rocket ship, like just go nuts. They get one little fact or idea, and they can just rocket ship to the sky with it.
Yeah.
And if they're not careful with making sure they started off in reality, then they'll definitely end up somewhere that's not reality, right?
Yeah. That's totally true. I agree.
Yeah.
As an intuitive myself, I like, for me, how it feels like is I'm noticing the pattern and like what to do with the pattern, and sometimes it's like a indifference to reality while I'm figuring out the pattern. Right. But yes.
So TI feels like that also in a way, that what works, right? The subjective part is we don't care about what works. We just care that it's true, right? And we can rocket ship on truth, even though it's not connected to what objectively works.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like introverted functions kind of have their own agenda, and while they ignore like the other thing while they're focused on the agenda.
But I think for any also does that in terms of reality. True. They can rocket ship on,
That's true, yeah. But with NI, I try to like figure out a main idea or a main overarching theme.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to...
That works for all cases. That works for every single possible case that can come up.
Yeah.
Gotta be,
collapsing everything down to...
And the problem is if you run into a case where it's not working, where it's not accurate, then you have to update that NI somehow to make sure that it's includes this case. Yeah, and the TI too. The TI wants to update as well. Right, yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Binyamin, for coming on. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to have you. He has really great interviews on his channel, so go check them out. He has an updating definitions of the cognitive functions, and they're really good. They're in the OP group, so you might have to be in the... Well, I'll present them when they're done, yeah. Oh yes, when they're done baking, Binyamin will present them. But yeah, he's a cool dude. Definitely check him out. Yeah, very cool. Super cool. So if you like this video, like and subscribe to my channel, like and subscribe to Binyamin, and I hope you guys have a lovely day and that the world treats you well. Bye. Yeah, that's a good ending. Have a good one.